be honest, to speak like this and have absolutely no feedback from you guys. Okay. Hello everybody, can you hear me now? Yes, thank you very much. It's a bit weird, to be honest, to be in front of you, speak super quietly. I have the impression that none of you can hear me. It's a bit disconcerting, but we'll go through. Some information before we start. As you can see on the slide, there is an online platform where you can put your questions if you have some, and something important as well, if you have colleagues that could not attend today, this is live stream, so you can send them to the YouTube Odoo channel and they will be able to watch this live if they're really interested in the new mobile app of Odoo. First of all, just to know my audience a little bit, can you raise your hand if you're more of a technical person? Okay, that's good, because this was for technical people. I was stressed that I made it a point to name it something technical, so that's like not naming the talk, the new mobile app, to avoid people that would come in here and then get bored to death. So that's really cool. But okay, let's begin. I'm going to explain to you today the new mobile app that we're kind of bundling with Odoo 17. It's a bit different than what we had before, and explain to you why the technology we used and why now was a good time to do this switch. First of all, we'll start with a very generic reminder that in 2023, mobile apps are not really an option anymore. If you are somewhat of a serious company, if you need to offer services to customers online, you need to have something that is akin to a mobile app. For the obvious reasons that we all think about when we speak about this, like real-time notifications, like the fact that you want to access your analytics from everywhere, know how your shop is going, or it's selling, that kind of stuff. And of course, since 3 years ago, because you work a lot more remotely, or sometimes you even work on site to the customer. So for example, you have to take a mobile device to record stuff with your customer. This is the traditional argument that we have in all, let's say, Western companies. One that we often lose sight of is that if you take a look at what other markets are doing, or how emerging markets are evolving, most of them are skipping steps on the technology ladder. This is not a new phenomenon, this is quite well known. And if you take stats, for example, based in South America, North Africa, and countries of that kind that are now getting well into the digital revolution, you see that they are skipping the desktop and laptop computers. Here, this is just a quick statistics about how many people have access to a desktop or laptop computer in their home. And you can see that those numbers are really not high. It's from 2018, so granted, probably things have moved a little bit. But 11% in India had no access to a laptop or desktop at home. Okay, that's not supposed to happen, I believe. Okay, we're back on. And these people have access to computing technology. They just usually will skip the desktop or laptop and will use a mobile phone or a tablet, usually because it's more portable and less expensive in some cases. So that's something to keep in mind when you think about mobile apps. It's really not an option anymore. It's something that you need to have. Unfortunately, they're really not that easy to develop. Because first you need to learn specific languages. You need to learn Kotlin or Swift or something like that. And that being already complicated, the most complicated part is working with publishers. And I'm going to be talking quite a lot, and not positively, about Apple today, because they are really a nightmare to work with. And I'll explain actually what's been going on inside the Odoo mobile app and why we actually had to do this switch now. So you have a lot of publisher constraints. For example, you need to validate every update to the app, and at Apple this process is manual. Someone will test each update that you send. It can take a few days. So even if you want to plan releases, it's already a nightmare. You have some weird rules that apply to your apps as you try to publish them. For example, if you use the iOS Odoo mobile app, you will notice that when you start using it, instead of seeing a grid of icons like you do on your web browser with Odoo, you will see a list of apps. The reason for that is that Apple does not want any app to have a grid of icons as a home screen, because it might confuse the users about whether they are on an app or on the phone. I think it's a bit insulting to the users, but whatever. That's the kind of rule you have to abide by with Apple to publish on the platforms. And finally, there is also the issue of payments. Especially Apple is very adamant that if you allow your customers to pay from somewhere within the app, you have to do it through their system, and they will take a really quite substantial fee of 30%. 30% is enormous. I mean, no wonder this company makes billions. They steal it from a lot of other developers. Yeah, as I said, I'm not really fond of Apple at the moment. So yeah, mobile apps are quite complicated to put in place. And this is where a new technology comes in and saves the day, and it's called a progressive web app, or a PWA for short, even though it's not so short to say. These apps are a new kind of app that you can easily publish on multiple platforms at once. And I'm going to go a little bit into details. Just out of curiosity again, who amongst you know already about progressive web apps? Okay, so let's say a third of the audience. Sorry if you know already all of this, but I think it's quite interesting because I find it quite revealing that in a room mostly full of technical people, only 1 in 3 has heard of this, even though it has existed for years and it's gaining in popularity. So I think it's interesting to remind what this is and how this works. So what are these? If you take the words apart, it's actually quite simple. Progressive simply means that we use web technologies that are available in some browsers, but not all. And the point is that if it's not available, it should still work. So nothing in Odoo, in the Odoo website, will break if you use this. If you don't have these technologies in your browser, nothing will be visible to you, or everything works out of the box. But if your browser supports it, we will suggest new usage, new options to you. Web simply means that we use web technologies, so it's HTML, CSS, JavaScript, nothing more except one JSON file, but let's count that as JavaScript. And app in the sense that the goal is to make this website behave more and more like an app. So that means that you have a place in the Windows taskbar or a place in the home screen of your device. You have notifications, you have all this stuff that we have come to expect of mobile apps. Now you can actually do them with websites as well. So PWA for short, it's a web app that uses modern web technologies to deliver something that looks like a native app. It uses quite a lot of APIs. I'm just citing them here, but you have the possibility to have an offline mode, you have the possibility to use a lot of hardware from the devices themselves, like the camera, the GPS or the geolocation. You can use push notifications, you can integrate with the OS, so that, for example, if you share a picture, you can register your PWA as the target for this sharing, or on the other hand, you can also have a menu comes up from within your app to send data to other app in the system, for example, an image or a video feed or whatever. You can have app badges, so you know these unread notification, these unread icons that are so stressful, you can have them on your website too. You can define an icon. Well, it's just the basics that I put there. If you're interested in that, I would advise you to go check the Mozilla Developer Network, or MDN for short. It's a really extensive website that explains all the APIs quite fully and quite understandably. And so we have all these technologies. How should we proceed to use them? If you want to build a PWA today, you basically have 2 things that you absolutely need. One is the web manifest. It's basically just a file that will tell to the browser, hey, I'm actually an application, here's my icon, here's my name, here's how it should look like. And then you have the service worker, which is kind of a middleman between the browser and between your app and the network that can interact with all the HTTP requests that are outgoing, all the push notifications that are coming in, and act on them. We're going to go a little bit into more details using the Odoo app that we released as an example. If we go into the web manifest, as I said, it's simply a JSON file. You put a name for your app. I mean, it's stupid, but in Odoo we also made it customizable. So for example, if you want to rename the app to whatever your customer wants as their app name, you can. It's in the debug settings. It's in the settings if you go into debug mode, but it's visible there. We have the icon as well. At the moment, it's not possible to customize it. We didn't have the resources to do it in time. We'll probably do it at some point. So that's the basic let's say, look in the home screen of your phone or your device. Then you have stuff to declare that your app is actually working in a separate window from the browser. So that's what the display standalone means here, is that we want this app to open outside of a tab and not have an address bar displayed at all. So it kind of that's what happens when you launch it. It was difficult to get this screenshot because it appears for like half a second, but I managed it. And this is what happens when you launch the app. You have this standalone display, you have the background and theme color. The background color obviously is the background of the window. The theme color is in the case of Windows, is the title bar of the app. In the case of Android, it's the color of the, I don't know the name of this widget, like the place where there is the time and the notifications, it gets purple as well. And then you need to define where your app, what is the scope of your app on the web. So basically, it is always scoped to the base URL you have. So for example, actually I think this is the odoo.com production database. So that the base URL here is odoo.com, and the scope of the app is the /web backend. That means that the website of Odoo is not a PWA. It's possible to do it as well if you want. In this case, we didn't think it was meaningful. It's quite rare to install a simple website as a PWA. Maybe one day it will be more common, I don't know. But with this manifest, we already told the system, okay, take this application that lives on the web in a tab in a browser and make it look like we did a lot of R&D and a lot of investment to have a mobile app or to have a native app for the platform, and this only took like 15 lines of JSON. So that's already quite cool. The other part that we have to put in place is the service worker. This is the more technical part of this system. Basically what you have in a service worker is listeners to specific or handlers for specific events that are fired either from the browser trying to reach the app, or oppositely from the app communicating with the system. In Odoo, we decided to manage 4 of these events. This is obviously not the full code, but what we support is first the installation event. That's what happens when the customer decides, oh, actually, yeah, you know what, this app, I would like to install it. What you want to do in this step is prepare your app to live on the device, and basically this means everything that the app needs to work offline, you need to download it now. And that's what usually a lot of PWAs do. They simply download a bunch of images, JavaScript files, CSS, HTML, put it in cache, and then they will use it in the next handler. But at this point, this is all we do. Then we have the fetch event. This is probably the most impactful one you can override, also the most dangerous one, because you're basically acting as a proxy or a middleware, let's say, between the server and the app. That means that you can slight bug. That means that you can literally rewrite requests as they happen, and even reroute them. The point of this, the actual idea behind this is that if you are offline, this handler will be able to tell and will say, okay, we are offline, I will never be able to reach the server, I will instead provide you with something from the cache. Either it's something meaningful, for example, in Odoo, what we could have done but didn't do is, let's say, put in cache everything you view as you move through the app, and then if you try to come back later to it and you're not online, we can reuse what you got at that time. The problem, of course, with that is that you have synchronization issues, so we didn't do it, but we could have. Yeah, so that's mostly the goal of this listener. Again, it's quite dangerous because you can really do nasty stuff in there. But if you don't mess up, it means that you can really support offline mode without much of a hassle. The other 2 events that we listen to are the notification-related events. One is the push event. That happens when the browser receives a push notification for the device, specific to this device, and we have to handle it somehow. Usually you will receive a lot of metadata information in the notification payload. For example, in the case of Odoo, we know this is, someone mentioned me on a task. I have the name of the task, I have the model of the underlying record, so I know it's a task in the payload, that kind of stuff. Why do we need that? Because we will use it to reroute the user in the next step. What's important to know here is that, and it's again like an iOS specificity, on Chrome devices you can receive notification and do nothing with them. It could be useful, for example, to send information to the application in a way that is invisible to the user, because the application will, for example, prepare something in the app so that the next time the user launches it, something is waiting for them. You cannot do that on iOS. For better or worse, in this case, I think Apple is probably in the right mind that you could use this mechanism to send whatever you want to any customer without them ever knowing it, which is a bit weird. And so if you receive a notification on the Safari iOS, you have to display something to the user. If you don't do that, Safari will disable your right to send notification. So that's important to know as well. Again, one of the many iOS specificities that I will tell you about today. Once you have done this, the next logical step is what should happen when the user interacts with this notification. In the case of Odoo, it's usually pretty simple. What we have to do is simply look at the payload. Is it a record? If yes, we have a model, we have an ID. We can simply route the user to this specific place in the system. If it's a channel, like for example, someone is DMing you on Discuss or notifying you in a public channel, then we take you there as well. This code is really quite more simple than the rest, but still it's important to put it. There are more events that you can handle in there. For example, if I remember correctly, you have events that will tell you if your device is switching from online to offline with regards to network connectivity. You might want to use that to display a banner to the user, oh, you've just gone offline, you cannot save at the moment, for example. In Odoo, we already had a mechanism that does that from the app itself, whether or not you have this technology in use. So we didn't have to do it. Besides, this is usually quite disruptive because it could take you from working someplace in Odoo, and as soon as you get offline, you get rerouted somewhere else without the system saving anything. That would be kind of annoying. So we instead just display a quick notification, and when you're back online, everything goes back to normal. So that's basically the service worker. And these are the only two items that you need to know about. And yeah, right, one more thing, or a few more things to tell you about iOS still. Just to tell you how much of a pain it is, I have to share this load, you know. The iOS stuff that we had to take into account was that if you want to have an icon that looks good on iOS, don't use the standard way, because if you want to include transparency, for example, which I'll show on my screen at the end, maybe the icon for the app itself. If you want to use transparency on iOS, they will put a black background, which looks really, really ugly. And if you try to have something a little bit more modern, like what we call maskable icons, so basically icons that you design to be cropped in some ways by the OS because they want to have the icons look like a drop or a circle or a square or whatever, they can redo that on the fly. This will not work on iOS as well. So that's a bit annoying. You have instead to put a specifically designed icon in the head of the HTML page. So okay, let's live with that. Another painful problem that we had is that you have no shared storage between the web browser and the progressive web app, even though they do use the same browser besides the hood. Why is that annoying? Is that because on iOS what you will do is go into Safari, connect to your Odoo instance, have a notification that you can install it, so yeah, good news, I will install it, switch to it immediately, and you have to authenticate right again. It's a bit annoying because we have no way to bypass that without completely blowing up the Odoo security mechanisms, so we didn't do it. This means that you will have to authenticate twice, whereas on Android devices, the local storage and the cookies are shared, so if you're authenticated on one, then you're automatically authenticated into the app as well. Other browsers, just a sec, mais j'ai une heure, hein? Okay, ça va. Merci. Okay, a little bit of pressure, but everything is fine, I have the time. So I was saying, yeah, in other browsers you will have the option to automatically trigger, or to, let's say, programmatically trigger the installation of the app to the user. You can only do that based on user interaction, so you cannot force this mechanism to do something without the user at least clicking a button. But on iOS, this doesn't exist at all. So what we have to do is basically display like a tutorial telling the user you have to click there, and then it will work. That's a bit painful as well. I'll show you in a minute how it looks like. That's kind of a preview. It's a bit dumb, honestly. It's a bit annoying, but we have to live with it. The good news is that support is clearly improving. And that's actually the main reason that we did this for version 17 and not version 16, is that up until, I think it was March of this year, you could not have push notifications for this kind of app on iOS, which basically means that your app is useless because half of the functionality of a mobile app or of a lot of mobile apps comes from this notification. So it was a bit annoying. They added support a few months ago. They are also increasing even now their support of these new technologies, and the rate at which they are adding support is increasing as well, so that's good. I think, by the way, that this is all due to this remarkable woman that works at the W3C in the CSS group. There is zero chance that she will see this talk, but if she ever does, thank you, Jen Simmons, for moving to Apple, because I honestly think you've made a global impact on the web community. Okay, so that's the idea of these PWAs, the possibilities that they have, the restrictions that they have. But at Odoo, we were coming from a world where we already had a mobile app. And so the goal of this transition is also to avoid feature loss, clearly. So we had to start with what can we do with the mobile app at the moment in Odoo, and can it still work in a PWA? So what do we have in the mobile applications that we have at the moment? We have push notifications. We have the support for custom modules. So if your Odoo instance has a custom module installed in it with some custom JavaScript file, it will work out of the box. We have automatic updates by the OS itself. We have access to the camera, but that's the only hardware you can really access on the device. For example, if you were planning to use the geolocation API in a custom JavaScript file that would get loaded into the app, this will never work because the app has not been saying to the OS that it might need location at some point, and so you will never get that access. So we only add camera. We had support for multi-account connections, which was really nice. And we also supported basically the two main brands, which are Android and iOS systems, as well as their tablet counterparts. So how do we compare with this new app? Well, pretty well, actually. We have magically added support for Windows and macOS as well, without doing anything, so that's cool. We have access to more APIs via the browser itself, so we have access to geolocation, or basically any web API, you can use them. What we have lost, however, is the multi-account system, for the simple reason that we cannot have multi-account working in the website itself for security restrictions, because the cookies are not accessible to the JavaScript file, so basically we're kind of stuck. But we have something of an alternative that I will speak about in a minute. And in my opinion, the biggest improvement, at least for you, that we have made this year is that all of this lives in community and is completely customizable by you. We had a lot of requests in the past to get access to the source code of the mobile app that we publish, so that you might customize it to a customer's needs. We always refused for multiple reasons. The main one is that if you actually did ever work with Apple in the past, you should know, or you will probably know, that they really dislike white labeling systems. So multiple publishers publishing basically the same app with few variations, they don't like that. And so they would have probably prevented you from publishing your app in the first place, or they would have unpublished us, which would have been really costly for us. So that's one of the reasons we didn't want to give it to you. And the other is, frankly, that it's not a good way to invest your resources. Of course, that's easy to say as it's our decision, but the nightmare that it is to build and publish these apps is really probably not worth whatever the customer was paying, unless it's really, 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 really good customer. So now, if you want to customize this app, you don't have to go through us. Everything lives in the community edition of the web module. There's nothing magical going on in enterprise. You get push notifications in community as well, which was not the case before with the mobile app. So that's good as well. And but basically you can use any API that the browser exposes. So that's all the APIs that I talked about before, and I'll show you a little bit more what's coming in the, let's call it, middle term future. It's not 10 years from now, but it's not next month.
En fait, c'est une demi-heure. Hein. Tu as une demi-heure.
What?
Ouais, tu vas devoir closer maintenant.
Okay.
C'est un autre temps.
I've just been told that my 1 hour talk is actually a half an hour talk, so I will have to speed a bit. As I told you, we lost the multi-account feature. What we have now instead is multi-app. So that means that if you have different instances, different databases, since they identify as different sources in the browser, you can basically install the app as many times as you want. That's my device, actually. I have 2 Odoo instances. What you cannot have is 2 accounts from the same database. This you will still have to log in and log out. It's a bit annoying, but there was no way to bypass that. The install prompt, as I told you, we have to tell iOS customers, hey, click there, click there, click there, and then you will have an app. On Windows and iOS, on Windows and Android, it's much more user-friendly. Shortcuts is probably not worth my time than that it's precious. The offline mode, as I told you, we decided not to do it. So what we have instead is a screen telling you that we do not work offline, which is already far much better than having the Chrome dinosaur game working or making you wait. Basically, you just have to get back connectivity and the app will reload itself by default. And in the end, was it worth it? What are the pros and cons? Because obviously here I'm really enthused by this idea, so I'm kind of not balanced in my opinion. What we do lose clearly is marketing and SEO visibility. Because when you are on the App Store, when you are on the Play Store, your user can easily find the app. They know it exists, they know you have resources to publish it, it gives you credibility. Here, they will only be able to access the app from your backend. So they already have to start using the product to get the app. It's a bit annoying. There's no clear solution to that yet. Some marketplaces for PWAs are emerging, but since the Odoo PWA is not centralized and basically lives with every database, we cannot even publish it there, so it's a bit annoying. For the rest, you gain a lot of stuff. You gain freedom from Apple. I cannot stress this enough. It's amazing. You can finally sleep at night. Even though you have still to do some stuff for them, but it works. You have an actual single code base, not in a React native way where you have really complicated build steps. You have something much more simpler, and you have extensibility for you guys in the community, and I think that's probably the most impressive one. So, is it worth it? Yes, clearly, and I will cut my slides short because I'm out of time, except for this one, because I know the question is coming. What about current apps? For Google Play, it will stay published as long as it can. We plan on keeping it, especially because 15 and 16 are still in use today, and we want these customers to be able to access their instance. For Apple, it's a bit more complicated because actually we haven't been able to update the app for a few months now due to some conflict with them that they will not yield to us. And so at some point we know that Apple will tell us, hey, you haven't updated your app in 2 years or 3 years. We will unpublish it if you don't update soon. And we will never be able to update unless they change their opinion regarding web view applications like Odoo is. So we have actually no idea what's going to happen with iOS. Obviously the point is to keep it online and available as long as possible, but we cannot offer any guarantee regarding that. I had more slides regarding what's happening in the future, but I don't think I'll have the time to go through them. Do I have the time for a few questions? 3 minutes? Okay, thank you very much. Work by going online anyway, because that's the easiest way to do it, I think, to have a centralized way. This has been answered, so I don't need to read it. The community team is responsive. We have moved all the responsiveness inside community this year, maybe even for 16, I don't remember. But I'm not gonna demo it because I don't have the time, but all the responsivity of the form and Kanban views is now in community. I think the only thing that you really don't have in community is the apps feature, which is not a deal breaker, I think, because you have simply a side menu instead of having an app screen. Fine. So you can still do a lot of things in community with this new app. What can be push notification triggered for? Basically, they are triggered for now with direct messages and mentions in chatters, but you can customize that in custom code. If your notifications are delivered by email, you can actually recombine them. You will get the notification in the app, so you get both. And if you want to change that, at the moment it's not possible, but that's probably something that we'll do at some point. It was in one of the slides talking about the future. Can you write the records while offline? No. While offline you cannot do anything. We didn't want to go into this niche use case. I mean, it would have impacted a lot of people, but you very rarely need it. The only exception where I think people might need it is, for example, if you work on site to the customer and you're in some kind of basement or whatever, then yes. But offline is really a kind of a fringe case, and the investment in resources to have it work properly would be huge. And for us, the return on investment is not there yet. If you want to do it, now you can, because it's in community. So I'm sure the OCA will work on it at some point, but we didn't do it. What about POS? POS has been unchanged. It's not in the scope of the PWA, so it works as before. It will probably get turned into a PWA as well soon, but it already did work offline. It already did synchronize when it could, so all that is unchanged. I have no idea what this is. It seems more like a remark than a question, so I'll mull over it later. No, there is very little you need to be careful about for the PWA. Basically, in any case, if you want to test it, simply shrink your browser window to the size of a phone, and all the dev tools make it possible anyway, and it will be visible immediately. No, so the background is still purple, even though we switched to something more white. Yeah, we did develop the PWA before we developed the new theme, and I considered changing it, but I thought it was nice to still have a little bit of brand identity somewhere in there, so we kept the purple. It's still in use in the UI, so it's not that jarring, and we tried it in white, but it's kind of difficult to have it white and looking good on different devices. So we decided to keep it purple. Yeah, I will share my slide. They're on YouTube anyway, I can share them. And thank you a lot as well. Have a good day, everybody. See you soon.